This happened when my sister and I were around 6 and 8. We are now 43 and 45, and it is something that still haunts us, occasionally. We had an amazing swimming pool in our neighbourhood. South African summers in Johannesburg are hot and long. The swimming pool was the ultimate destination. Joe was the adult that was always at the pool. He would swim lengths, practice diving, and tickle our feet under the water. Just typing this makes me feel nauseous. To this day, I still have issues with my feet being wet. Specifically, I am unable to leave cream on my feet. The sliminess makes me claustrophobic. I only realised the connection last year. Whenever we would sit on the edge of the pool with our feet hanging in, he would swim past all of us and tickle our feet in a row. I can't remember all the details 100%, but someone playfully screamed, "Oh no, Joe," and "Joe did it again," and sang, "Oh no, Joe, not again, Joe." We all laughed as kids do. Then he tickled our feet again and made us sing his new song, "Oh no, Joe, not again, Joe." It became a sort of game. He would grab us under the water and we would sing. It went from feet tickling to chasing us and grabbing our waists under the water. "Oh no, Joe, not again, Joe." That song never goes away. One day at the pool, Joe tells us he has this amazing farm just out of town. He would like to take us to see his animals, his corn, and his own swimming pool. It sounded like heaven to all of us. He was talking to several children, boys and girls. He told us to be at the swimming pool on Saturday, but not to tell our parents. We will go in his car. As soon as we get home, we tell our dad everything. We are so excited. This farm sounds amazing. Our dad says, absolutely not. Who is Joe anyway? We tell him that Joe is our friend at the pool and plays with our feet and chases us around. My dad says that actually maybe we can go, but he wants to meet Joe first. The next day, we go to the pool and we tell Joe we can go with him, but our dad wants to meet him first. Joe is upset that we told our dad, but we tell him not to worry, our dad is cool. So Joe walks home with us. We only lived about 5 blocks from the pool and comes to meet our dad. Joe is about 5'6", and my dad is 6'7". The personification of a gentle giant. My dad is super polite to Joe. He asks him loads of questions about the farm. Where is it exactly? How many kids are going? Has he spoken to other parents? Joe was cool as a cucumber. He answered the questions smoothly and confidently. My dad ended by saying, "Joe, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday at your farm. I think we will have a great time. I will bring my girls though, and we will meet you there." The next part is a bit of a blur for me. I'm not sure how we ended up driving in convoy with about 3 other dads and their kids from the pool. It was so exciting. My dad had the map book, leading the convoy to the best farm in the world. We drove about an hour out of town, and we arrive at this derelict farmhouse. No animals, no corn, no swimming pool. Just this run-down, isolated, scary-looking farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. I remember being really confused. My dad must have read the map wrong. All the dads huddled together. We have no idea what they are saying, but they are angry. We are also angry. We are obviously lost, and it's the dad's fault. Everyone gets in their cars, and I start screaming at my dad about how he deliberately got us lost because he doesn't like Joe, and he didn't want us to have fun. My dad is silent and pensive. After my tantrum, he says to my sister and I in a very calm, deep voice, "Joe is a bad man. He was going to hurt all of you. He is the bad man your mom is always warning you about. My mother is obsessed with true crime. There is no farm. I am so happy you girls told me what was going on, because something bad could have happened to you." His strong voice broke in those last words. The gravity of his tone and the break in his voice made my sister and I realize immediately that he was right, and we were in danger. We cried and apologized. He made us promise to tell him if we saw Joe again. Joe stayed away from the pool for about a month. As soon as we saw him come through the gate, we quickly got dressed and ran home. When my dad came home from golf, we told him Joe was at the pool again. The next day we went to the pool with our dad. We were swimming, and my dad was sitting on one of those benches to the side. In walks Joe. He comes to the edge of the pool and is calling us. We refuse to go to the edge. He's getting frustrated. My dad gets up and comes up to Joe. "Can I chat to you outside quickly?" Joe physically shrunk. My dad had his hand on Joe's shoulder and was guiding him out the pool. I can only imagine what my dad did and said to Joe. My dad is a gentleman, but don't mess with his girls. Joe was never seen again at our swimming pool. A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, as I had never smelled that before around the house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I just got off shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had light sensors that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out it was 9 something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I had opened the door and stepped inside. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway. The one I was in, a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in a bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans and frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away, and I heard a loud crash come from the room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I had heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by my bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped, all the books, pictures and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in my kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed and canned foods had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell though, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often used to smoke meth. So they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realised that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. They collected up the so-called evidence and told me I should stay with my family or friends that night and get the door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple of hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts, but I didn't see anything. The next day I called to have the door fixed and the motion lights installed at the back and sides of the house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house though. I lived there another 3 years without incidents. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going to my closet and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I got to crawl to a space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I'd been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he hadn't got into the bathroom at the end of the hall first. The thought of what would have happened to me, had he caught me, haunts me. About 6 years ago, I moved to another city for work. I worked for a 911 ambulance service that responded to calls in the city, as well as the county, which had a few other small towns. The city itself was not a large city sub, 100k people max. Working for that service required working 24-hour shifts. It wasn't particularly busy. Maybe you'd get 5 to 10 calls in 24 hours, and generally get some decent sleep at night. The city was a pretty rough place, as the oil industry had boomed there, which drew all sorts of folk from around the country to work in the oil fields nearby. One night in January, me and my partner, who was an EMT basic, received a call in the next town over. It was about 2 AM when the call came out, and the only information we had was that a person in an apartment called 911 after hearing the downstairs neighbour screaming for help. We responded emergent as the details were very limited. When we arrived on scene, police and fire department were already there, and we were getting ready to make entrance into the building with them. The person who called 911 was there, and told us which apartment she heard the screaming from. We attempted to pound on the door at first to get the resident to come to the door. When no one answered, the fire department got ready to spread the door and make entry. Luckily, the landlord showed up and gave us the keys into the unit. As we opened the door, the creepiness started. The apartment was pitch black, not a single light, as if no one was home. Police entered first, and with our flashlights, we followed. Looking around the apartment, the kitchen and dining room looked like a hoarder's nest. I am not exaggerating when I say there were literal 5-foot-tall mountains of garbage and food in the kitchen, and the same in the living room, but with magazines, clothes and garbage. This meant there was only a very narrow walkway to navigate the apartment. Officers proceeded down the hallway, ahead where the bedroom and bathroom were. One of the officers stopped at the bathroom door, and there was light shining from underneath. The officer opened the door, and just stood in the hallway. With a flat tone, he said, "She's in here." I walk in first into the bathroom. The first thing I notice is the strange lighting. It is a very pale, yellow light coming from a single bulb on the ceiling, similar to those old heat lamps that used to be in the common bathrooms. The light gave off an odd vibe, as it was just so unnatural. The next thing I noticed is the lack of anything in the bathroom. No floor mats, no toilet cover, no towels, no knickknacks. Just nothing. Empty. Except the vanity, which contained the sink. On top in the bowl of the sink were an approximate 20 to 30 makeup bottles piled up. Some were open and leaking, causing there to be powders and liquids everywhere. The last thing I noticed was the body of an elderly woman lying naked in the tub. As I walk closer, I can see her laying in her side, nearly in the fetal position. Her skin is pale, and there is about 8 inches of water in the tub. Looking at her face, her eyes are closed, and her head is against the bottom of the tub, with her mouth and nose completely submerged under the water. My partner steps in behind me. He suggests we just call the coroner and inform them of the body. 2 officers pile into the bathroom behind my partner, so that there is 4 of us in this tiny bathroom, with me next to the lady in the tub. With me being who I am, I decide to do my due diligence and at least make sure the lady is dead. I kneel down next to the tub and reach my arm in and put my fingers on her neck, attempting to check for a pulse. In an instant, without warning of the slightest hint of movement, the woman springs up out of the tub with an agility and the speed of a feral cat. The only reaction I was able to manage was to just stand up as quick as possible, and I just stood there staring at her. She stared back at me, eyes wide as can be, before she started screaming at me. She attempted to cover herself with her hands as best she could while sitting in the water still. I quickly look around and notice everyone else who was in the bathroom with me bolted out of there, not a single soul in sight. I tried to steel myself and try calming the lady down, telling her who I was and why I was there. She denied screaming and told me she does this every morning as she has some kind of joint condition and soaking in warm water helps her joint pain. Now at this point, I have my doubts, and I have to question this woman's sanity. I question her regarding self-harm, and address what potentially could be interpreted as suicidal behaviour. She denies all of it. The next step is to determine her mental capacity, to ensure she is in the right frame of mind to make responsible and appropriate decisions. She answers all my other questions appropriately, and at this point, per the law, she is able to refuse any and all care, as she is mentally sound. I ask her if she will at least allow me to check her vitals, so that I can be sure she is healthy and can add it to my report. She refuses, and tells me to get out of her house, which she has the right to. I acknowledge, and have her sign a refusal of service form. As I leave the bathroom, my partner, the 2 officers that were in the bathroom with me, along with the 2 other officers and the firefighters, were there waiting in the apartment, just staring at me with eyes wide and gaping mouths, speechless. I don't say a word, and we all leave the apartment. Once we all got outside, I had the most uneasy, uncontrolled fit of laughter. My partner and the officers started laughing too. I thought I might have shit myself. My partner told me later that all he remembers is seeing her move, hearing me say, "Oh fuck," which I don't even remember, and running out of the bathroom. I wish I could say I never saw this lady again, but that would be untrue.